Okay, this video is to summarize investigation 5A. So we've got some keywords right here. So we read this f of x and g of x and h of x. Make sure to say of between. Don't just say fx or gx. It's a g of x. Domain and range is just another words of inputs and outputs. Domain is just a set of inputs, and the range is the set of outputs. This notation is, we read it maps to, and that's another way of saying, another way to describe function. So here's the key questions. What is a function? What's the relationship between the table and the function? And what's the domain of this? And definition of function is oops, wait a minute, how do I do this? Okay, definition of function is a fair rule. So if you think about the Guess My Rule games, as long as the game is fair, we call it function. That means if you have one input, you have to have only one input. If you have more than one input, we don't call it function. Don't get mixed up with output and input. You can have two inputs for one output, vice versa. But you cannot have one input you cannot have two inputs for one input. So, okay, that's kind of confusing, but it's one input for one output for one input. So, okay, a composition of function. Let's say we have this problem: f of x equals 3 times x plus 5, and g of x equals 3 times x squared. So first we do this part. Wait a minute. First is we got to do the G machine. So that 3 goes into G machine, which is square and make it 3 times, which is this one. So we have G of 3 equals 3 times x squared, which is 3 squared. So that's 3 squared, so you got to do this part first. That's 9 times 3 is 27. That 27 goes into F machine right there. So we have f of 27 times equals 3 times x, which is 27, plus 5, which is 81, plus 5 is 86. So the 86 goes to G machine, and 86 to the second power, and multiply by 3 times 86 squared, whatever that is, that goes into F machine. So right here, first it goes into the 3 is the input, right? 3 goes into the G machine first, then whatever you get, that goes to F machine, which is this one, and then that whatever that is, you go to G machine, and then whatever you get from there, you go to F machine. That's what it is. Okay. Domain of a function. Okay, so we got these. What would be we have restriction for this. So domain is the set of functions. So what number you can put for x so that everything makes sense? Well, it's all real numbers. You can put any real numbers in this function. Okay, any number you put, it makes sense. For the second problem, also you can put any numbers. So you can also write x can be, as long as it's all real numbers. That's another way of writing this one, right? Some of you liked it, some of you didn't like it. So it's okay if you are not really, if you don't really like it. But at some point, if you could get used to it, it would be great. So let's move on to the next one. right here. So this is the square root function we call. We're gonna learn that in later on. And here inside the square roots, if you have negative numbers, that doesn't make any sense because you cannot put any negative numbers in there. Square root of 9 is 3 because square root of 3 squared is 3. However, how can you put square root of negative 9, right? There is no way that you can convert it to some number of square equals square root of negative 9. We cannot really find a number there. So as long as we are talking about real numbers, we can have that. Okay? So how can I go down here from here? Alright. Let me see. Okay. That's not what I want. Go away. Select the object. No. That's not what I want. Okay. How can I do this? So, how can I move this one? Technologies. You gotta figure out, right? Okay. No. Huh? Okay. Oh, I got it. Okay. So here's another one. Right here we have a fraction, and in a fraction you cannot have 0 downstairs, as I said. This upstairs it can be whatever number you want. Numerator can be any real number, but denominators you cannot have 0 because no number you can divide any number by 0. There is no number you can divide by 0. So if you have 2 over x plus 5, for example, if the denominator here gets 0, if this will be 0, then that's the only case you cannot put. So if you put negative 5 here, the denominator will be 0. So the 5 is the only number you cannot put in this function, because if you put negative 5 for x, the denominator will be 0, which you cannot, which doesn't make any sense. You can't have 0 in the denominator. So yeah, you know what I mean, right? Okay, let's move on. Alright, and so what is a function? So that's the problem that I want to give you for this. So what is a function? Please explain it in your own words. So that's the first problem. Problem 2, explain in your own words. How do you solve a problem like this? Okay, and problem 3, I forgot to put that on. So what number you cannot put in this function and why? What's the domain of this? Find the domain. The domain for each function. Part A, what's the domain of this function? Part B, what's the domain of this function? Okay, so that's what I want you to do, and I want you to send it in Edmodo. Okay.